Ever since the Cyberpunk technical issues video that I made a while ago, there are so many freaking hooplas related to the game that I feel like I really need to talk about them even further, just for the sake of updating the information that I already had. Remember that part in the video where I talk about how the game doesn't utilize Ryzen's SMT? That one is already fixed apparently, but there are still more bugs and performance issues left. Anyway, it's amazing in how one of the most anticipated game of last year has turned into everyone's latest punching bag. Even the absolute best version of the game, which is the PC version, still has everyone mocking it and making fun of it to an nth degree. This game is not ready, and the developers are aware of it. They released an apology video that got a mixed reception. Some people praised them for owning up to their mistakes and trying to fix the game. Others criticized them for being dishonest and lying to the consumers. I, on the other hand, just want the game to be fixed. I can nitpick the amount of BS being spewed on the apology video, but the overall message, as in we will fix the game and make sure that everyone can play it, is something that I can get behind on, and that's what matters. At least they're not ditching the game, and not that they can at this point when everyone's crosshairs are at them and when the game is still not on the PlayStation Store at the time of writing. Aside from the apology video, our resident trigger happy on the block button journalist Jason Schreier released an article on Bloomberg talking about those issues with information that makes people about as surprised as the sun rising in the morning. Despite the game being announced decades ago, the game was only beginning development at the late of 2016, which is really not that surprising considering that they made The Witcher 3's DLC before that. In terms of responding to how challenging the game's development would be, someone simply responded, "We'll figure it along the way," which is very reminiscent of the BioWare magic that worked out so well for Anthem, hasn't it? There's also a bit of a discussion in regards to how the E3 2018 demo was fake. I've never actually seen the demo or the 48-minute gameplay demo because my mindset at the time was that I am sold on the game already and I prefer to avoid as many spoilers as I can, and that demo spoils way too many content that I like. I am absolutely freaking glad that I didn't watch it at the time, because this demo, to put it simply, is goddamn misleading. The first big glaring issue is the background information for V. In the final game, you're only allowed to select your background story. In this demo, you can choose your childhood hero, your key live event, why you go to Night City in the first place. All of that is reduced and simplified into free background stories, which at the end of the day wasn't really that important. There are some people who speculate that the game was intended to be not centered on Keanu Reeves' character until Keanu is involved, because Silverhand turns out has a really significant role in the game. After looking at the childhood hero options, I can totally believe that. The early mission shown in the demo is at least mostly the same as the final game, with the exception of the UI obviously. The UI is radically different, and there's a segment where the game switches into a more cinematic third person. After playing the final game, I actually want a lot more of that, because while the first person cutscenes are nice, it's the third person view that makes me want to appreciate the fact that V is a character that I am role-playing as. There are so many things from the original demo that makes me want to play that game over the one that I have right now. It feels a lot more polished, or rather, it feels like a game that was released in an alternative universe where people are free from the cough virus and the game is actually working properly. Still, is it really fair to judge the work in progress demo of the game when the final product is not representative to the entire thing? Yes! Yes, it freaking is! I'm fine with removing one or two features, but that backstory is such a significant thing to remove or promise and then not deliver that it's almost insulting looking back at it. And since this is a Jason Schreier article, there are of course going to be discussions of crunch and employees being mistreated, which does happen in CDPR, or at least to a certain extent depending on who you ask. I don't really get why I should be involved in the crunch discussion. I get why a lot of game journalists want me and so many people to get involved with it. It's because they want more people to agree with their agenda and push unions as if it's the one-stop solution for every bad working condition in every company ever. To suggest that we as the consumers can do something about it is ridiculous. The harsh reality is that most video game consumers aren't activists and aren't going to join your crusade for better working conditions, or at least not when they're being given video games to shut their mouths up, and at least not when the Game Awards are showering endless praise towards a game being built on the foundation of a terrible viable working condition. I'm just saying, Jason, I know you genuinely care about the fate of the workers, or at least the sample that you interviewed, but it doesn't dismiss the fact that consumers aren't game developers, and they're about as invested to your crusade in better working condition for game developers as politicians being invested in making the world a better place. They only say that they do, but at least I'm honest in my apathy. Aside from that, there's really nothing much that we haven't already known from the article that the developers or everyone else haven't talked about. It's clear that the developers were caught on by surprise, like the ambush of a Spanish Inquisition, and with that level of surprise, they're forced to keep on developing the game so that it's at the very least on a playable state, but it couldn't even achieve that, especially on the consoles, and the quarantine and lockdowns didn't help matters further. The director of CDPR has responded to Jason's article, and the response is... I don't even. The first one is to address the accusation of whether or not the footage from the E3 demo is fake. I wouldn't go that far. It looks like a more polished version of the game from an alternative universe. The scenarios in the demo are scenarios that exist in the final product for the most part at least. This response is just the director going, well actually, but the correction doesn't make a whole lot of difference. He then proceeds to defend missing features and how the car ambushes exist in the final game almost verbatim to what is shown in the demo. That is not really important though. These are just small corrections that really miss the overall point, and the overall point is that the game needs a lot of fixing. If what you can do at this point is just small corrections, then at least you can agree with the general point that the game needs fixing, right? What's baffling is the director saying that the vision presented in the demo evolved into loads of excellent review scores from many renowned gaming outlets in the world. Listen, just because your game gets my excellent mark doesn't mean that it doesn't have technical issues that need to be addressed, and it certainly doesn't mean that I would recommend your game, or at least as of this state. He does acknowledge the issues and says that the team is working to fix them, but how in the name of God can you say that the entire thing is not disastrous? That's insane. That's nothing to see here carry on level of insane. The article talked about how most of the staff knew that the game is not ready for release in 2020. Some are even surprised by that. The director's response? You talk with 20 people, some of whom are ex-employees, and that's not most people. So you're telling me that among the 500 people working on the game, only about 20 people have the opinion that the game isn't ready for launch. I want to know what methods you use to brainwash the other 400 plus people into thinking, yup, this is totally acceptable. Either that or you're lying. And those people also share the same opinion as these employees because they're not delusional. The last one addresses a minor issue that Schreier brought up for no reason. People from around the countries are being hired to develop the game, but they obviously need to be able to speak English. So this is barely a criticism for the company if you ask me. The important thing is, this response in general is just baffling. The director clearly cherry-picked the points that can easily be answered while dismissing the overall point, and that being the launch is a disaster. And yes, it is a disaster. You can't keep on denying that. And even to the points that he cherry-picked, the rebuttals are absolute weak sauce, so this is just dumb in general. The thing is, should I really be talking smack on a game that everyone and their cats and dogs and sock puppet accounts have talked smack on the internet already? Why can't I talk about the positives of the game and appreciate the game's content while putting aside a lot of the stinky bugs and glitches? Okay, fine. If you want me to talk about the positives, despite having loads of technical issues, even on the best platform that this game can run at, I still spent about 90 plus hours of the game even after I finished it, so there has to be something good about it that makes me want to come back. And there are legitimately good things about the game that I loved the first time I played it, and things that I want to come back to just to see what's different. I want to see the dialogue options that I can choose if I pick a different character origin. Sure, they don't change much, but at least it's interesting enough for me to find out and experience for myself. I still love the story and the writing and the characters in general. I love the universe and the world that the game gives to me, or at least on the surface level and conceptual level before the bugs and the bad AI come and break that immersion. As I said on my previous video on this topic, this game really demands a premium hardware out of you, and even then it still puts my mid-range GTX 1660 Ti laptop into submission. I have a platform in which the game can run in at least a playable state, and even I have technical issues that deserve to be reported first and foremost before any of the game's amazing qualities are reported. And as someone who plays the game a lot longer than a lot of people at this point, or at least a lot longer than my Steam friends, I can happily report to you that the game does have loads of great qualities in them. I'd even dare to say that this could be one of the best RPGs that the PC will ever put in the market. I just can't find myself myself praising the game on these current times when everyone else are suffering from the major technical issues. I just can't put myself at the top of a pedestal with loads of people complaining about the game not running very well on their system, both PC and console, and say, well, the game is actually good, guys. You just need to spend loads more money. Spend more money in a barely working video game in this current year economy? How much of your head has been shoved up your crack? So I want to give my sarcastic apology to those people who are tired of the internet bashing on this game. I am on the position of saying that I genuinely love this game and I would recommend it to people, but that recommendation comes with so much asterisk to the point where the asterisk has taken over that recommendation to the point where it has turned into its own freaking star system. I genuinely love the game, but how am I going to share that love and enthusiasm when everyone else around the room can't have the same experience as me? I don't know what else to say on this, but for the love of God, CDPR, please fix this buggy mess of a game. You promised to commit yourself into it, and I want you to fulfill on that promise. You're totally aware that this launch has given you quite the bruise, so learn from those mistakes and grow from it. No Man's Sky did it, Final Fantasy XIV did it, and I hope you guys did it too. Maybe it'll take 2 years before the game is actually amazing, and then people will hail this game as if it's an underappreciated classic. But let's just hope that by the time that happens, the cuff vaccine hasn't turned us into titans.